So I am recording this, everybody. If eventually when I will introduce Steve, and he'll talk for a little bit about how he became a producer and his sort of producing philosophy, and we can ask him questions, and eventually I'll put us into gallery view. So if you don't want to be shown on gallery view, then you can go ahead and hide your video if you like. And for the time being, while Steve is talking, if everybody listening could go ahead and mute, and then we can open it up once we open up for Q&A. So without further ado, I want to say welcome to everybody that's here. This is the National Storytelling Network's Producers and Organizers Group Lunch with a Pro, which we have every other month at 1 o'clock Central Time on Tuesday. It's the second Tuesday of every other month, and this is just a free informal chance for us to meet with a pro and get some producing and organizing tips and best practices and learn a little bit more about the producers among us. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our pro for today. And I'm excited to introduce Steve Daut. He is president of the Ann Arbor, Michigan, and let me go ahead and get him spotlighted here. He is president of the Ann Arbor Storytellers Guild, and he produces a series called Living Room Live. I believe that's the name of it, Steve. And really excited. He's, how long have you been a member of PRO-SIG, Steve?
Well, I've been involved with it for a number of years, but I think I joined as a member just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so wonderful. So this is a chance for us just to get to meet some of our producers among us, and really excited to have Steve here. He's not been a featured pro before in our group. So without further ado, I'm going to mute myself and take myself off and turn it over to Steve for a few minutes. So take it away, Steve.
Okay, thank you. I have actually not been to these luncheons, so I wasn't really sure what to do, and I know it's kind of informal, so you know, if at any point I'll try and watch the chat. If anybody's got some questions as we go, I'll keep that open so I can answer those in real time. I think I want to sort of talk a little bit informally and just give you general history of my production evolution. When I was, I think, 7 or 8, our family used to do spook houses in our basement, and we would get the neighbors over and we'd do these productions, and I was usually behind the scenes pulling the strings and making the bats fly across the ceiling and all that kind of stuff, which involved black thread and generally a toilet tube, and we can go into that detail if you want to sometime. But that's what I remember as really my first foray into production. And I also, when I was young, I think starting about 13, we did magic shows, and so I produced my own, and I would build these boxes. I followed Houdini, and I build these boxes and do all this, you know, these magic shows, and so that was kind of fun, and I actually continued that until I was in my 30s, I think, doing magic shows. So once I got involved with storytelling, then I used to do, there were a few little things that we would do. The Ann Arbor Storytellers Guild, we do is roughly quarterly a house concert, and although I haven't specifically been involved with that one other than telling and occasionally being the MC for that, you know, I kind of got the sense of production. And then Laura Lee Hayes and I, probably 5 years ago, Laura had been doing these things called Story Night at a local bookstore, and I got involved with doing that. And in fact, she and I bought some equipment, sound system and all this, and I have recording equipment for that. And so we started doing those on a regular basis, and we got to know the ins and outs of uh, what it takes to do a small little production like that. And a few years into that, I started getting involved a little bit with the ARC. The ARC, if you're not familiar with them, is a venue in Ann Arbor that does mainly singer songwriters. So it's the kind of venue where John McCutcheon or a lot of singer songwriters, various people. Robert Jones has been there, and a lot of just flat singer songwriters who don't really tell stories, or they tell stories in music. And so began to get familiar with them a little bit, and the backstage production and those kinds of things. So that's really my sort of in-person kind of production experience. I've always been fascinated with sort of the technology behind things. So post-production work, I have video editing software, and I have audio editing software, and I'm kind of a techie in that way, that I enjoy that piece of it, always have. And so the production that I do now is of necessity, that came up through COVID. And I really was not doing online production, the way that Rachel does with Story Crossroads. She really has made a profession out of that, and has done an amazing job with that. I am more of I'm doing it right now because it's something that we all need, and it wasn't something that I really got highly involved in before, in terms of the online production. And I guess I would say that just about exactly 1 year ago, when things starting to hit, I was actually down in Denton, Texas, at the Tejas storytelling, and we got caught in that. I actually left the day before they shut it down, because I thought, oh no, all the news is telling me we shouldn't be doing this. And so I came home, and I started thinking about the things that we do with the Ann Arbor Storytellers group. Ann Arbor Storytellers, we have a story swap once a month. We have a sort of a public meeting, where a general meeting, where we get together and tell stories. And then it's every fifth Sunday, we were having a house concert. And since we couldn't, all this stuff started going away. I had a number of engagements with the schools, and I had a number of different jobs. It's the same story as I'm sure a lot of you have. All that work went away, and I started thinking about how to take care of the folks in the guild, how to continue that process. And so I went ahead, got a Zoom account, so I didn't have to be limited by the 40-minute thing that they had going. And I thought, well, I'm going to start to do a production on Sundays, but I didn't want to step on the toes of the folks who actually did the house concerts. And so I did it on the same schedule. I did it on Sundays, but I did it later on at night. I said, let's do it at 7:00. So for a couple months, that's what we did. It was May and June. In fact, it was 3 months, I think. It was April, May, and June. We did a regular house concert, the Ann Arbor Storytellers Guild. with members of the guild doing these stories. And I got to thinking about it because if all of you probably recall this, that there was all of a sudden this flood of oleos out there. Everybody was doing one. And that's what I was doing. And I thought, the real goal here is to try and find some replacement for the concerts that the pros are used to doing. You can do, or oleos every day, and you're sharing a little piece of a pie, and it really isn't replacement income for somebody who's trying to make a living doing this. And so I started thinking, why don't I just do these, find something different, find a niche. And that was really what I was focused on, is find a niche. And the niche that I decided to pursue was to find one professional storyteller each month and do and give them their reign. Do an hour-long show, tell whatever you want. There's no theme. Treat it like you're the headliner at a concert that you would normally do, and that's the kind of venue we'll do. And so we can share the revenues for that. I have expenses with Zoom and equipment and promotion and all those kind of other things. So we'll split that out, and then following the model of Story Crossroads and some of the other ones that are out there, we'll put up a tip jar, and then the tips go directly to you. We'll have a box office, and then we'll have a tip jar. And that's how it started. And the first month, I talked to Antonio Hosha about it, and he was thrilled, and I was thrilled that he was thrilled. And so I said, let's do it. And he asked me, why Sunday night? And I said, well, that's just how it started. And he suggested going to Saturday. Antonio, whatever you want. So we go to Saturday, and it was just wildly successful. I mean, it was way beyond anything. In fact, I want to tell you what I learned each time I did these things. With Antonio, what I learned is always make sure that you are getting notification when people sign up for this, and stay ahead of it, because in fact it turned out we ran over the 100 people, and we had, by the time we were done, there were like 110 or 112, and people were turned away because I was trying to run the production. And they were coming in at the last minute, kind of after in fact, we had signups coming in after the thing started. The other thing I learned was make sure that you put Eastern Standard Time or whatever the time is, because anyway. So you can imagine the stories there. So, but it was incredibly successful. And so, encouraged by that, I started asking some other folks, and it was just, explaining what I was trying to do, that, we really want to make this something that is, I know it doesn't replace the kind of revenue that you're probably getting right now, or that you were getting before COVID hit, but the idea is to support the professional storytellers that rely on this to make a living. And rather than going overexposure, I said, let's do it once a month, and that way I can promote it and so forth. And I fell very quickly into the idea that I'm going to promote it 3 times on social media. I do an early one, which is part of the, I don't know if you've seen the advertisements. I can put one up if you want to see it. And you can ask me later about that, and I'll find one we can put it up. It's the Critters on the Couch. Are you familiar with that? If you are, if you've seen that advertisement, okay. And that's the first one. So it's always branded Living Room Live. You see the couch, you see the critters, and I put a new teller in there amongst the critters each time. Okay. So the first one is a very familiar scene with a new face in it. And then the second one and the third one, I come up with things based on who the tellers are going to be and so forth. And so I put out 3 times. I put out right at the beginning, a month out. It's kind of a save the date. The next one I'll generally put out maybe a couple weeks ahead. And the last one is always within the last week. I also promote it in various places. I have a growing email list that I use. I put it in the local paper and the Ann Arbor paper. I put it in MI Story. So I put it out as far and wide as I can. And it's interesting because we have new people every time I do it. And there's a core. What happens is when you do it on a monthly basis like that, you have to do that to get traction. Monthly basis or some kind of regular basis where people begin to know what to expect. And so I have a core of folks who I can rely on to show up pretty much every time. And the goal, again, with going away from Oleos and going this route is not to say, I can get a whole bunch of storytellers there. It's to broaden out beyond that community. And that's one of my big goals is to introduce people who are not familiar with storytelling to that art. And I've had a lot of feedback from people who said, gee, I never knew what storytelling was like. This is great. I'm coming every month. So, you start, it takes some building, it's slow building, but, as long as you stay with it and as long as you have elements that are very familiar and then some new stuff thrown in, that really seems to help. People want that familiarity with something that they're used to, but then you add something else. And that makes it interesting, but also comfortable. So I did Jeff Doyle. And from him, I learned, he said, we were doing the way I do the sequence is I shut off all chat. I mute everybody. I want absolutely no distractions. I mean, if you go to a theater and you're watching somebody up there on the stage, you're not going to be sitting there chatting with your neighbor through the whole thing. And so, I wanted as much as possible to duplicate that and to say, look, let's be respectful. Yeah, I know you're in your home. I know you know where the bathroom is. I don't have to worry about that stuff. But, when the storyteller is doing their thing, I want to avoid any kind of distractions that I bring or that Zoom brings. And so no chat, everybody's muted. And then at the break, I take a little break, even though it's only an hour show or a 90-minute show. It's an hour's worth of storytelling. I always take a break halfway in between. I put up the tip jar. And I have found that there's a rush to give tips. I mean, we get a lot of tips just by putting that up for 2 or 3, maybe 5 minutes at the most. And we'll get a lot of tips just by doing that, by taking that little break, giving them a chance to breathe between sets, and they'll go right in, and I'll generate a lot of tips there. And then at the end, so I will open up the chat during that little break, and then close down the chat again. And at the end, we open it all up. So now everybody can unmute, and we have a discussion afterwards, a Q&A with the audience. So one of the things that I was doing, I put up a splash screen at the beginning as people are coming in. And Jeff Doyle said, gee, could you put some music in there? Because it was just silence. And so what I've ended up doing, I have this royalty-free music, so I could put together my own set list and have that playing in the background when people come in, with the splash screen of who's coming up the next months. And so then the next month, I actually went to, I think that, yeah, that was, Jeff was September, so that was October. And I did do an oleo for Halloween. And that was great fun. And that was done as a fundraiser for the Howell Opera House. That's another thing that I found. When you do something like that as a fundraiser, and this goes back to 2 or 3 years ago when I did a production with Jim May, if you have some kind of a cause that you're doing it for, again, people become very generous. And in fact, out of that, I was able to donate like $750 or something to the Howell Opera House. So that was really successful, a great time. And it was fun. It was Halloween stories, scary stuff. Then the next was Jennifer Monroe, and she was great, and she taught me about lighting. I actually bought lighting based on her input. With Noah Baum, she mentioned recording, and I had never recorded it before because I just didn't want to get into copyright issues and all that kind of thing. And what she said was, well, you could record it, and maybe you can make some more money by allowing people a short window of time to buy it afterwards. And I have tried that, and now I record it every time. And what I do is, instead of kind of making it for sale afterwards, what I do is say, anybody who has donated any amount before the end of the show will get a link to that recording. So it's a little, it's that sort of, just a little bit of a nudge to say, it's a free show, but we appreciate your donations, and here's a little benefit to getting to doing that donation. And I think that's probably another lesson that I learned, probably the most recent lesson, and that is, if you're going to make a donation, which I that's the way I've gone, and I think a lot of people go that way. But if you have some little benefit that you get from making the donation, that it can significantly increase the amount of donations that you get. And, so I see a question that says, do it charge a ticket price? And I do not. But I do have a suggested donation amount. So what I do, and it's partly, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel and come up with some new system for doing things, I was already doing Square, because I have books that I sell. And so in my live shows, I like to have the little Square reader that I take with me. And so I just sort of integrated Square into the process, and I send registration, and in the emails I send a registration link and a donation link, and each one has refers to the other one. So you don't have to make the donation to get registered, but when you go to the registration site, it says, hey, if you want to donate, here's how you do it, right? And when you go to the donation site, it says, you can cut and paste this link to register. But I provide two separate links. When I send out the email to the list of folks who have done it before, I send them both those links. When I post it on social media, I only post the donation link. So, and that's to avoid, the Zoom bombing and all that kind of stuff. Just a little bit of security. You could still, if you just found it on social media, you go to the donation, you can copy and paste that link, and you still don't have to make a donation, but it's that one little extra step that you have to do that keeps the riffraff out. It keeps the Zoom bombers away, right? And I have never had a problem with Zoom bombers, but I have so much stuff that I do that sort of are preventative of that. That I suspect that's probably why, because I don't make it easy for them. And I'm not sure what else. I mean, that's pretty much takes me to what I wanted to say, and we can open it up from there.
This has been great. This was really great. You have a lot of good things to think about. The shift from Oleos to kind of having a one teller. You talked about house concert, the tip jar, the video and production. So I would encourage you all. I think what I'm going to do at this point is put us all in gallery view. And if you have a question, you can either put it into the chat, or if you want to unmute yourselves or raise your hand, I can unmute you. I'll get us started off, and I am going to go ahead and put us in gallery view. Before I do that, just a reminder, we are recording this. So if you don't want to be seen in the gallery view, then maybe turn your video off, but I am going to put us in gallery view now, and this is being recorded. Okay. Yeah. And so thank you so much, Steve. It was nice to get to know some of your philosophies. You had some really core philosophies there. One question I'll get to start it off. You mentioned with the shift from Oleos to sort of supporting one teller. Did you make a concerted effort to support local tellers, or, is it more just whoever is in need of it? Because I know some places really focus on the local. I'm curious to know your philosophy on that.
Yeah, I have not, because not with this program. We do that with the Jennifer Otto does Michigan Meetup, and that's local tellers, that's Michigan tellers. We have the regular meetings that we have, and that's via Zoom. And so Ann Arbor Storytellers, we do that meeting once a month. We do the story swaps once a month. As far as the local tellers, I brought them in for the Halloween, and if we're doing some special like an Oleo like that, we will do that. But for the monthly Living Room Live, I'm looking for tellers that if I tried to do an hour-long program with local tellers, with a single local teller each time, I'd run out in about 2 months. there's just
that's not very many tellers.
Yeah. Well, there are plenty of tellers that can tell a story or two, but in terms of having a show that lasts that long, that's an evening of entertainment, if that's my model, I'm really looking at at professional tellers out there. I'm looking at the folks who are used to making a living doing this, and so they have these evening long or hour long programs, and that was the idea of it. I did want to respond to something. I saw something from Rachel about this lingering afterwards, because that is so important, especially when you're closing off chat and when you're closing off comments, when when you're muting people, that feedback is so important, and I can't overemphasize that to open that up. And I just have to say, I did a program last night with a library. They just shut everything down afterwards, and they asked people to turn their cameras off. And I love the venue, but I didn't even have a chance at the end to look at the chat. And it's like, wait a minute, I want to know how I did. So that idea of being able to have some interaction back and forth at the end, that's why I open it all up at the end. And people hang around for a long time afterwards, and I do not cut that off. I mean, I do keep the program itself on time, but if people want to hang out until I'm just burned out from it, then we'll keep it open. So, and I will have to admit that sometimes I kind of go, okay, that's enough, please, really.
So Brenda had a question, and a couple people have already answered it, but Brenda and Olio, as Rachel said, and as somebody else there said, is various performers telling different kinds of stories in a single performance. So it's not featuring one teller, it's kind of getting a range of styles. So yes. Thank you for those that answered that into the chat.
And there's something very neat about doing the Olios. I mean, when we did the Halloween thing, it was absolutely great. And a little shameless self-promotion, I have one coming up called Not Your Mother's Folk Tales, which is a week from Wednesday. And it isn't. Tomorrow's Wednesday, right? Oh, yeah, it's a week from tomorrow. Not Your Mother's Folk Tales. You can go to my website, stevedaut.com, and it's on there. And it's a number of us. There's 6 of us, and we're each going to be telling a rather modernized and quirky version of a storytale, of a folk tale, or a fairy tale. And you're right. You can get a sampling of so many different styles, and it can be a really rich experience for the listener. And those are important too. It was just a focus that I decided to go with on this particular monthly program.
So, okay, Liz has a question, but before that, Brenda, did you have another question?
Yes, I had a couple.
Okay.
So one is, what is necessary? So I'm an actor. I have a one-person show that I've performed all over. So I'm in that case of, well, now I can't book. Right. I've been booking, but not really making much money. I have something coming up that's like $100 in a theater festival. So this is interesting to go through the storytelling circuit versus traditional theaters. Mm-hmm. But I also teach healing through story, telling your story through that way. So I've been doing showcases for a while, virtual too, just with my storytellers, and they're all doing like 5 to 10 minutes. But I love this idea of opening it up. I also love the idea of casting people who I know have solid shows. Like I've gotten so much information from here so that I can be better and not just keep it so small. So how do you, so first I wanted to know what a story swap was, and also when you're doing things that are not just one person who I imagine has all the, reviews and everything else, but how do you keep the quality up? Like I want to be able to give newbies some options, but I want my quality to be like the storytellers I know or people I've worked with.
Sure. Well, I think, there's a model. Actually, I did stand-up comedy for a few years. And the model that, stand-up uses is you've got an opener, you have a feature, and you have a headliner. So, the opener, you get maybe 10 minutes, and a feature will get 20, and the headliner gets 45. And so, that's one possible model of saying, okay, we're going to start, we're going to have a newbie here and there, and we're going to give them a little time, and then we have our headliner. Right. So So that's a possible way to bridge that.
Right. And then the other thing is with, that's so great, because then that also encourages newer people to come watch as well, because they want to tell their story specifically with a healing perspective for me. So then as far as how I've done it before, when I've led it for my storytellers who take classes with me, is that, I do it through Eventbrite. I also do it where I learned, because it was free at first, and then you do have people that aren't really here. They're like multitasking and everything else. I don't want to do that for my performers. So I do Eventbrite. So far, I think the most I've charged is $7, but I want to have that Zoom, like, you need to be here. And I've taken the money on that. I've directed them for that. But I love the idea of sharing a portion with the storytellers as well. Do you ever find that, like you said, you take kind of your expenses off the top and then split the rest? Is that the model that's working for you? Because
I actually, the way I do it is I actually take the expenses out of my split. So I don't take them off the top. And the other thing that I do, since this was an idea to not only support tellers, but to support the Ann Arbor Storytellers group, I also take a portion out of mine and give it to the Ann Arbor Storytellers. In terms of the various, there are all sorts of different kinds of software. You say Eventbrite. I see Sheila Arnold's here, and she knows all of that stuff. I think you're using Event Combo now, Sheila. Is that correct? Or is that one of them? Sheila, you doing?
Oh, hold on. Oh.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
Sorry,
somebody called just as you were speaking, and I was like, oh. So I was trying to tell them I'll call them back later. So repeat what you said. I heard my name spoken.
Yeah, I was talking about Brenda says she's using Eventbrite, and I said that you have been experimented with a number of different ones. I know you've used Event Combo. I think you've used some other ones. So in terms of being and it's in the context of being able to figure out how to split things out and say, how do you split out the revenues and that kind of thing. And I mean, I do it with a spreadsheet. I track it with Square, and you get an accounting of everything, and I can set up different accounts, and then I don't even track it as the event happens. I just get an accounting afterwards, and then I split it all out the way it needs to be split out. So I don't know how if you do it any different way, if you're more automated than that, Sheila.
No, not any more automated than that. It's just literally just we put it into Artist Standing Strong. We put it into our account. We get it from after we finish the program, put it in our account, and then split it and divide it between all the storytellers and any visiting MCs or tech hosts that we might have. So they get to be a part of that as well. Because I work for pseudo work sort of for Artists Standing Strong Together, I'm not included unless we make like a tremendous amount of money. Then I'll be a part of that process. But that's not very much. We also don't use Eventbrite. And I'll just tell you about my experience with Eventbrite was that they have sold information before and had information stolen. And they actually don't have a good reputation in regards. They actually sell their things, and it says that in their stuff. So I use Event Combo, and sometimes I use Simple Ticks. I think Rachel put on their Wild Apricot. There's Kumo Space. Some people have started using that. So there's some other things. But I definitely don't use Eventbrite. And I will add, Brenda, just a little add, that one of the things I do when I do programming, and I think probably Steve does this too, is that I don't close the registration and the payment until a half hour after the program has started.
Ooh.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
because that last hour, the half hour
When
up
they
to
come in.
half hour afterwards, I will
Yeah.
get 20, 15 to 20 new people in there without a shadow of a doubt.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
we're in a different world than when we're in a theater stage.
Yeah.
And on this world, someone will go, "Oh my gosh, I have a program at 8 o'clock today, and it's 8:05. I need to get there." And
Usually
it's
me.
just,
Yeah.
so
That hasn't so I just don't have the technology down, I guess, because on Zoom, people come in late and then it's like, oh my God, the sound is on or there's a video on. There must
you
be a
can
way
press,
on Zoom.
there's a button you as the host, there's a button you can press that says mute everyone who enters.
Yeah,
Right.
So
and
you
the
never
video
hear,
too, so that they're off.
and so
Yeah,
that
you
don't
can.
have to worry about that.
We usually have our videos on though.
Yeah, and Brenda, I would commend to you Artists Standing Strong Together. They have a meeting every Monday at, is it 4:30 Eastern, 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time? What? Is that right? 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Artists Standing Strong Together. You can look it up on. They have a website. It's just an absolute great place to get ongoing information about production and various issues and so forth. So
I'll put the website up there for Artisan. It is a great resource. I want to make sure Liz had a question, and I want to make sure you're able to ask your question, Liz.
More comment than question, really.
Oh.
We do a mix of things between the Saturday night where it's free, it's open to everybody, and we do linger on after that, because I was finding personally, I was bereft when I closed the thing, and 1 minute I've got 80 people, and the next minute I'm sitting here all alone. So they literally do walk me out to the car, as you said, Rachel. So that's very good. That works. Then the sessions that we do, the 3 sessions a month, we have a guaranteed amount for the teller. It's the same as we offered them when they were live. Less expenses for traveling, of course, and they will get paid that no matter how many donations we get in. But we have found like some people are putting twice as much as we would have asked if they're enjoying a show. We've 93 people registered for Thursday afternoon, which we wouldn't get if we were doing it live. It's amazing, but from all over the world. So that works really well.
yeah, and that is one of the things you made a good point, Liz. There that I ask for donations and I say, here's a suggestion of such and such amount, but I find that more often than not people donate a whole lot more than that, and that's one of the things about ticket prices. If I said it's $10 a head or whatever it is, I get that much anyway, and generally more, by not saying here's a set price. And so on the one hand, you don't necessarily feel like you're going to be taken in that minimum, but on the other hand, you can get a lot more by just asking for donations. It takes me back to years ago when I was actually working for a living, and I got laid off, and I thought I was going to die, and I went out and became a consultant, and I was working out of my home, and I came in waves. The first time I started getting some work, and I didn't die, and then the next time, there was a slump, and I felt less like I was going to die, and by the time I did that for 7 years. And by the time I was done, it was like, I feel more comfortable now than I did when I had a guaranteed income, because, now I have 24 bosses instead of one. But if I lose one, so what? I got another one. So, in a sense, that's kind of how a working storyteller lives. They're really consultants in a way, in that, they're independent contractors, and they bring something of value, a service for money, and it's a personal service that they provide to their clients, to their customers. And so in a sense, it really is the best of consulting, because it's a lot of fun too.
I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. I want to point out a couple things. There are some great tips and, people are mentioning different systems that they use and they're putting it in the chat. Anybody is welcome to unmute and put that in there, but I just want to make sure people see all those great resources in the chat. And then Brenda had a question in here. I want to make sure we don't skip over it. She wrote it into the chat and she said, is there any place, sorry, I'm trying to find your question. Is there any place like a central place for somewhere for storytelling events that want professional storytellers?
I put on there an answer for Brenda.
Okay.
And I just put on there, Brenda, I would encourage you to join some of the Facebook groups for storytellers, Artists Standing Strong Together, Griots, which is called Storytellers, but I think it's actually, the name of it is Griots. The Storytelling Bulletin Board, you can announce for storytellers on any of those. Lots of storytelling guilds or state guilds, state organizations have Facebook pages as well. And you can look on there and then there's, they have Facebook pages, but they also have their own web pages. Where are you located, Brenda? I don't know where you're located.
I'm in San Diego.
Oh, well, the California Storytelling Association of California.
Which is where I found
Maryland's
Okay,
here.
good. So they have, and they can get to know Sarah Armstrong and the board. They'll help you get some stuff out. I am probably, I was going to say Marilyn McPhee is right here. She's in San Diego. And so she's on the board for the storytelling. And I will say that I do take unsolicited storytellers. So when people, I'm slightly different than Liz, which I think people do know by now, but people can say, I'd like to try. And
oh yeah, well we would do that. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound, sorry for interrupting you. We would take them at our Saturday sessions, but normally I need to hear a person. I won't book them until I've heard them,
Yeah. And I will, but that's, and I am abnormal, and I know that because most folks won't. But it's because we've just been doing things very differently, putting storytellers up, and that does give you a whole new crew of people because people will fall. Yeah, sorry, Liz.
I don't mean. I'll invite them on to tell a story, so we hear what they like. But I don't book them as a headliner until I've heard what they do. Everybody's welcome to come and tell on a Saturday night, or we've opened sessions where people can tell. But I won't if somebody sends me a flyer, I won't say, right, I'll book you until I've heard you. It's just sort of sensible.
Yeah, I think for me, because I come from the theater world, this is a whole new world. But because my show just got a piece of it, got accepted into Storytelling Festival. And that's why I'm like, there's this whole new world trying to also figure out how am I maneuvering for myself as a professional and then for my clients who are kind of getting there. But so I would imagine it's also submitting the reviews, a trailer or a piece of, now everything's virtual.
It's slightly different. So I will say that you don't usually get reviews from somebody or even sometimes trailers from other storytellers. Sometimes you'll have videos of people. And Liz, I'm not saying that you're, please no, I just do it differently, but I think it's wonderful that it's really good for people to hear people. I just don't mentally have the time to do that for myself and what I do, but and I know that's abnormal. One of the things, Brenda, you might want to talk to Megan Wells. You can look her up at Megan Wells. She's in Illinois. She has a theatrical background, a strong theatrical background. And then Sarah Brady, who also has a strong theatrical background. And I was trying to think of one of our guys that has that strong theatrical background. But you might get a chance just to talk with them and see kind of what they have done to make the theater and the storytelling really connect.
Right, that's great. And are they on Facebook?
Well, they're also, they both have websites. Great. So Megan Wells has a big web. If you type in Megan, MEGAN Wells, Megan Wells, storyteller, you'll get her website. Sarah Brady, you'll get her website. I think there was some guy, David Novak. Thank you. I was like, I know there was a guy.
Yeah, David.
Oh my God, I feel so grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and so they have really good, and they'll be able to kind of connect. You can kind of see how that connection happens, because sometimes it is a weird place to go from theater to storytelling, but it's a powerful place. You can do amazing things here.
Yeah, there's so much, when you can bring theater into the storytelling, it's pretty amazing. And the probably the biggest thing to get used to, and well, if you have a one-person show, then you've already penetrated that fourth wall a bit, and
Yeah.
that's really, I think, the biggest adjustment that people are traditionally trained in the theater and that have done the theater all their life. They're not used to that direct interaction with the audience, and that's probably the biggest hurdle, I think, that the folks have. Yeah.
Katie, and then
Emil's had his hand up for a long time.
oh, sorry, I'm sorry, Emil. I missed you. I'm so sorry.
Thank you for noticing. I was going to bang my gong, but
I'm so sorry, Emil.
no. This is my first event. I have never been to one of these things. I've only heard about them, and they're so rich with information. I also have a question, but I do want to take a moment because people have said they like unsolicited things, and so this is a response to the unsolicited. I'm a writer. I come from a journalism background. I write screeds on op-eds and turn them into stories. So I witness and I create and I tell them live. I have something today in the San Francisco Chronicle about magnet schools, and I was for magnet schools anyway. So that's in the Chronicle today. But I also write for the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, and I write these stories about Asian America. So if anyone wants an Asian American story, Filipino American, I tell a story today on the ALDEF blog about David Fagan, who is the African American who went to the Philippines and deserted because he saw what they were doing to the Philippines was immoral. And so I tell that story. So I tell a lot of stories like that. But like I said, I'm a journalist, but I've also been to I've been to 5 Fringes with my one-man show about what happened to me at NPR and other things. So I just want, my question though is to Steve, because Steve, you said you do some stand-up comedy, and I've done some stand-up comedy. Although I've done theater, I've broken the 4th wall, but I'm working on the 5th and the 6th wall as well. So my question to you, because this is a very critical one, the audience, you mute the audience. Stand-ups love to hear the audience. And that is kind of like the evolution of this form. How do we train the audience in IT so they don't screw up the Zoom room? Or I've been to some things where they totally shut off everyone, mute everyone, and it's fine. I don't mind not hearing the laughter. I have to just assume that it's there. And I just wanted to know how, I guess from what you said, you mute everyone. But right. I mean, but you know what it's like to hear people too. So
yeah,
where's that happy medium?
Well, exactly. And I echo what you're saying, because I have done magic and I've done stand-up comedy and sketch comedy and so forth. I'm actually trained from Second City. I'm a Second City graduate, so I've done a lot of improv as well. And I am so used to having that interaction with the audience and to judging the audience. So I mean gauging the audience. And so my presentation style is really dependent on that audience. When I see, if the audience is not going with me where I'm going, I'll go someplace else. I'll try and bring them along. And I'm just used to that. I'm so used to that interaction. And I will admit that I have had a real difficult time translating into this medium because of that lack of interaction. I love nothing more than to wander into a sea of kids and start, messing around with them back and forth and just having fun. And so I don't know if there is one, because the limitation in the medium is one person talks, and if I'm talking over you, you disappear. We can't keep raising the level of dialogue and going crazy like you can with kids. With this, it's if one person is talking, there's just and there's the lag. There's a split second they've done some psychological studies of how trying to do the interaction on Zoom online on any medium, because there's just a little split second difference between what I say and how you respond and how it comes back to me, and it can feel like there's something wrong here, because we're so used to that public, to that face-to-face interaction, although that may be going away. But I'm not sure that there is a way to bridge that difference other than to kind of get over it. I mean, I have found that it's a very tough transition, and yes, I absolutely agree that there's a difficulty with that, with those of us who have really grown dependent on the audience interaction for our presentation. But I've been starting to do my shows again online, and what I'm doing, I go back to the old stand-up technique of over rehearsing. I rehearse it so well that I don't even have to think about it for it to come out. And that's the only way that I've found to get over that hurdle.
Yeah, I think that I did one meeting, and this is how you get over the idea, which is better, webinar or meeting. I'm a big fan of meeting because of the interaction. And as long as everyone knows, it respects that lag, and because it screws up your timing, you can have something that approximates the live experience. But I'm glad to hear that other people are still evolving and trying to figure out what the best way is, because I do think that as this evolves, this will be the best way to reach a lot of people to scale. Unfortunately, and maybe we're going to have a hybrid where some are live in some instances, but this is the way to reach people everywhere now. And I just want to learn from all of you how to do it the best way I can.
Well, and I do know that, some people haven't had as much of a issue with that transition. I know when I worked with Jennifer Monroe on the Living Room Live program, she said, "Oh, I have no problem talking with no audience because I do a lot of recording," and she's just gotten used to it. So it's just it's something. It's just a different style that you got to get used to. And I think, frankly, having gone through this and still going through it is making me a stronger storyteller in a lot of ways and a stronger presenter, because I can look at this little round thing and pretend it's you and
Yeah.
so it is something that you just get used to, different styles and different ways of doing things, and that's certainly a challenge.
One of the things, though, and one last point, radio
yeah.
is a real interesting way to, if you think about radio, and unless you have a sidekick, you can just say something and you're still connected if your words and your story are true. So I think of radio when I'm totally muted and you're right, Steve, when you look at the audience and you connect there.
Okay, Lisa.
So we have a couple of other questions. I think Ed had his hand up, and Katie, and then Linda. Ed, you're in two places, so.
Yeah, I went to one with better sound.
Okay.
You can hear me?
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So I have a comment and then a question. So the comment is for the actors that are coming into this. We have a local acting company called Celebration Arts in Sacramento, California, where I live. And every year we got together with them a long time ago, and they've been putting on a storytelling event. It's a 3-day event, and they get a lot of their own actors and people like me and other people, and they do storytelling up to 7 minutes and all kinds of stories. So what I want to do is contact more of the other acting companies because they're dying for events. And so I think we could present to them a storytelling event that they could put on through their own platform. So I'm going to explore that more, but I think that's a great menu for actors and actresses out there that, you probably already have those connections.
Yeah.
So that's my comment there. And my question was, I'm with the Storytelling Association in California, and I want to get some children's programming going. And I'm going to make a presentation today to our board about doing a monthly 3 to 9-year-old children. And my background is early childhood education. So I have ideas about that. And 45 to an hour presentation of songs, movement, and stories, and do that on a regular basis. So I'm just wondering if anyone has experience with that or ideas about doing that.
If people, I know there are some people in here that do, you might want to put it in their chat, or if you want to raise your hand and respond to that. Steve, I'm curious to know if you do anything for children, especially that age group, or have you adapted anything?
I have not really worked with children since this hit. I had a couple of school contracts that I talked to them about, and the schools that I was working with have not really picked back up much. But yeah, I mean that's a broad range for children, 3 to 9. But there certainly are some specialized programs for that. I have not put anything together, and I really haven't done it as a lot of work with children since this thing hit. I know some others out there have.
Yeah, Liz Ware has put some things up in the chat, and Joyce Slater and Rachel Hedman. So Ed, you might want to, I don't know if any of those three that put stuff into the chat, if you just want to say something real quickly. We do have a couple more questions. I don't want to forget about those. So
yeah,
and
I see Rachel put something out there, and that's I know she's real active with a lot of different kinds of programming. Yes. So that's a good resource.
As long as you keep it really interactive. I do it interactive.
Yes.
Maybe, we did it before Christmas, do a lot of participation stories, get dialogue going. You have to have your online safety rules. The parent has to be there, or teacher if it's virtual schooling. Right. But it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Katie, and feel free to continue to put things in chat as you wish. We're at 2:00, so just so people know, if you need to go, I understand, but we're going to keep going. Katie had a question.
I just wanted to give a resource, and I wasn't sure how to put it in the chat, but just to generally, if for storytellers looking for a place to do a one-person show, fringe festivals are really great. The call for NSN fringes just closed, but the Minnesota Fringe Festival is still open. And if you go on Facebook, there are groups called like Beyond the Fringe that regularly post all of the fringe open calls for proposals and applications and things. And and I don't know if there will be another fringe application cycle opening for NSN, but definitely get on the National Storytelling Network mailing list, because then you'll hear about all the calls for proposals and stuff.
Yeah, that's thank you, Katie. I appreciate that. I think you put the link up there, or somebody did earlier, but I'll try to find it again and put it there for the NSN site.
Oh, and since Katie mentioned this, I just found out that me and my little group are 21st on the waiting list for the NSN Fringe. So, if there's anybody out there who wants to drop off that list, I just threw it out there.
Okay. Linda, did you have a question?
I'm going to skip the question. I just wanted to do a quick promo. I'm surprised Katie didn't do this, of the next NSN event coming up in April called Earth Up. And there's still another week open or so to submit a story or a 1-hour performance, 2 weeks left to submit a proposal for a workshop or a master class. So this has all to do with, you know, the climate crisis and environmental justice. And so personal stories, folk tales, whatever, but we would really like to have more submissions.
I have a question for you, Linda.
Mm-hmm.
It mentions panel discussion,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see any way to submit to say, well, I'd be on a panel. I have a master's degree in geology. I worked for a number of years as a geologist,
Mm-hmm.
and I do have some perspective, but I don't really have stories that I would tell. So, you know, I just wonder about that. Just, you know, if you wanted to be a part of a panel, is there a possibility for doing that? Is there a way to do it? And we can connect online or
Yeah.
offline
Let's
after.
connect
But
after we can
Oh,
talk about that.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a great idea.
I'll just put my email in here. So,
How are there any more questions? First of all, Ed, I see that your
No,
avatar.
no.
Okay.
That's my other computer.
Okay. Are there any other questions? They're kind of coming in fast here on chat, so I don't know if I missed any. I appreciate the notices about the Earth Up, and I do encourage you, if you want to submit anything to that, that's a great opportunity. Any other questions or comments? I know we've been going for some time, but if not, then I just want to say thank you to Steve. You've opened up, obviously, a lot of discussion here about a lot of different topics.
good.
It was good to get to know you and your philosophy and kind of your experiences there in Michigan. I think you bring some really unique experiences and experience to the conversation here. I really appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you. So I do want to I'll put into the link there, chat. This is a link to the special interest group, the PRO-SIG group, which is what we are. And again, we have these informal lunches with the pro every other month. And if you want to join our membership, you can become a member of NSN, first of all, which I encourage you to do. You get some great benefits there. But you can also join membership of PRO-SIG. And in addition to these free informal lunches with the pro, we actually have workshops on production aspects. We've had workshops on creative possibilities, which was wonderful. Liz was a part of that. We had workshops on intellectual property, which was really great. We're going to be having our next workshop on March 9th, and I believe it's listed there on the website, and it's going to be all about contracts and the anatomy of a contract from a producer's perspective. So following up a little bit on that intellectual property discussion, but really getting into contracts. You can go ahead and register for that. You do get a significant discount as a PRO-SIG member. So I'd encourage you to become a PRO-SIG member and be part of the free informal conversations like today, but also those workshops as well. And Katie put up there, there's some more information coming in through the chat. So feel free to check all those resources out. Just a reminder, anybody that wants to can save the chat. I will go ahead, and all you have to do is go over, if you don't know about that, open up the participants window, and in the very bottom, you see the 3 dots that says more. You click on that and you should have the option to save the chat. Great, Brenda, you got it. So I would encourage you all to do that. Again, I just appreciate you all being here. I'll go ahead and stop the recording for today.